Okay, everybody ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome back to Objectively Awful, the podcast where we review movies that are bad for various reasons and really cut through if they're objectively bad or if people just have opinions on them and that they're subjectively bad. On Objectively Awful, I'm joined by my co-host, Kyer, and our special guest, Nevins. And I, of course, am Mitt. So let's go around and chat a little bit. How are we doing today?
To? I'm happy to chat.
This episode, we watched a movie that is gloriously bad, arguably one of the worst movies of all time.
Yeah, I could see how one could argue that.
I actually made the comment to Eric at one point. I said, this is probably just as bad or worse than Miami Connection.
I prefer Miami Connection to this one, but I think this might be the worst movie. We, of course, are talking about Troll 2. Now, we can get into the deep lore and history of this glorious movie, but
I hope we do, because I have a lot of questions. And I'm thinking that the history might answer some of them.
So both of you guys went into this blind, right? Neither of you know anything about Troll 2?
Had no idea. Didn't even know it was a thing.
Steve was so disturbed by the film that he did have to start Googling some things while we were watching, though.
Okay.
So he did discover some answers.
Yes. So before we get into that stuff, though, can somebody summarize what Troll 2 is for our listeners?
I'll tell you what, Kyer here. I'll give it a swing, and then why don't you guys just fill in the details that I missed.
Sure.
So, Troll 2, obviously not a film about trolls. That would be ridiculous. I don't think that word was mentioned once in this movie.
Nope.
There are zero trolls in Troll 2.
No trolls, quite a few goblins. But anyways, the premise of the movie is that a young boy, 12 years old, who's the protagonist, is having conversations with his dead grandfather. And his dead grandfather's favorite topic of conversation is warning him about trolls.
Goblins.
I'm sorry, I said trolls. That's not accurate at all. Goblins who will find you in the forest, force you to eat some sort of green goo, which is a chlorophyll-like substance, which then makes you into a plant, which then they eat. And so that's his big warning from the grave, which, of course, and very reasonably so, the rest of the family thinks is ridiculous, and that there's something wrong with the boy. Anyways, they are, as many people do, about to engage in a family swap, where a family from the country is going to go live in their house in the city, and they're going to go live out in the country for about a month, which the country is a dangerous place for goblins. And not everybody knows that, except for they do go to this town.
Nilbog.
Nilbog is the town's name, yeah. As it turns out, the town is full of goblins, which Nilbog is goblin spelled back.
What?
Yeah, so that's one of the big twists.
Wait, is your name not actually Kyer? It's Erik spelled backwards?
My name is actually Erik. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
You gave me a goblin name there. I see. Anyway, goblins also, I forgot to mention this detail, can have the appearance of a regular person.
Yes.
Sometimes, and in the case of the residents of Nilbog, have a clover leaf.
They all did.
Yeah, but not in the old story that the grandpa told. But all of the residents in Nilbog had this clover leaf
wart or
scar
something,
scab or something on their face. And that will indicate that they're a goblin. And again, their whole objective is to get all of the humans to eat their special goblin goo, which will then turn you into a tree or plant or vegetable of some kind, enabling them to eat you. And so the story is about the family surviving this. The family and the teenage girl's boyfriend and his friends, and just trying to survive the ordeal and get back to their house. That's kind of the premise, I'd say. If you guys want to throw in some details there.
I mean, the movie does a lot more than that. But yes, that's the premise. They go to Nilbog, and it's all part of these goblins' trick to get more potential vegetables into their town to eat more vegetable people. Steve.
Yes.
Did you love this movie?
No, I did not love this movie. Although there were quite a few occasions that we laughed out loud.
Okay.
At how horrible or terrible some of just all of it.
We've had a bit of a hiatus. We haven't done one of these in several months, so I just wanted to, I guess, see how much of a harsh reminder it was that you had signed yourself up for this.
Yeah, I said multiple times through this movie, I actually feel like the person who's being tricked by the goblins to keep coming back and eating this mush. And I'm getting turned into some sort of a vegetable as I'm watching.
I actually turned into a vegetable. You just sit there like a vegetable watching TV.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty accurate.
There's some deep meaning to this video.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, watching this, Eric summed up the plot pretty well, but you haven't even touched the surface of what's going on here layer-wise.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's a depth to this creation
that I don't know if I fully comprehend, but, I mean, there's definitely poor acting throughout, which I come to find out because nobody in this movie acted in anything else prior to this movie, and most of them acted in nothing else after this movie.
Because probably
so
anybody.
The girl in this movie is actually an actress, and she's been in a number of movies over the years, but this movie really hurt her resume. To this day, still does not put Troll 2 on her resume when she's applying for jobs, and she has gone on record that she doesn't know how many movies this role cost her.
Which one? Like the daughter or
the daughter?
Witch goblin?
No, the daughter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We'll talk about the Witch Queen or whatever the heck she is. I don't mean to spoil it, but the corn scene might be...
Oh, hey, wait, I wrote some things down about the corn scene.
Okay, yeah, let's get to it in due time, though. So let's start with what this movie is. Troll 2 was made on a budget of $100,000.
Oh my gosh. That's a good down payment for us.
It released October 12th, 1990. Now, does anybody want to venture a guess at what the box office return was on this movie?
On the $100,000 that they put in?
Yeah, they spent $100,000 to make this movie. How much do you think ticket buyers spent going to see it in theaters?
Tell me, what was the cost of a movie ticket in 1990? Do you know?
Kai, can you look that up real quick? What did a movie ticket cost in 1990? Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was probably like $4 or $5.
Well, I mean, I would say there was at least 1,000 people tricked into seeing this movie.
It was average of $5 a piece.
$5 a ticket. So you're saying you think the box office was $5,000?
It was at least $5,000.
I think it was $8,000.
Okay, the box office return on this movie was $1,131.
What?
200 people went to see this movie?
One theater.
One
200 people
theater.
go and watch this movie.
So this movie is referred to as one of the greats, as in one of the worst movies ever made. It's spoken of in the same breath as movies like The Room. For the longest time, it had a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, many, many years. But over time, as this has garnered popularity as a terrible movie, it's climbed up to about a 5%. So this is the worst reviewed movie that we've looked at on Rotten Tomatoes.
Nice.
It originally was called Goblin.
Which would have made sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me why it is no longer called that.
So there was a movie in 1986 called Troll, and its budget was $1,100,000 and had a box office of $5,450,000. So it wasn't a smash hit, but it definitely made its money back. And so somebody decided that if they named this as a sequel to that movie, even though they had nothing to do with each other, that it might garner some financial success. Considering
how could they do that and not get sued?
I assume that the studio must have owned, I don't know, to be honest, Steve. I don't know. And regardless, it didn't work. That movie literally made 5,000 times the box office that this movie did. I don't even know if that movie even ever heard of this movie. So this movie just abysmally bad, to a point where we talked about in Miami Connection how it was these two immigrants who thought they knew how to make a movie. They were trying to replicate 80s pop culture and action movies, whereas this movie, everything about it feels wrong.
Yes.
So I'll tell you why. It was written and directed by a couple. The director's name is Claudio Fragasso, and he was an Italian director who'd seen some success with his movies overseas. And so he brought his film team over to the US to make this movie. Him and all of his crew were Italian. 95% of the people working on this movie behind the scenes did not speak any English. So
that's readily apparent in the script. No, for sure.
Yes. The director instructed the actors that they needed to use the lines that were written in the script, to recite them verbatim, despite the fact that this is not the way humans speak. And they would say, no one talks like this. And he said, no, I know better. I am a true American film creator. You will do the lines as they have been written for you. That's where we get very strange scenes, like the one where the boyfriend sneaks into the girl's bedroom and he clearly wants to make a move on her and she's not interested. And so he says something like, you're going to turn me into a homo. And she said, my dad will tear off your nuts and eat them because he hates you. Things that I'm sure you've said to Chloe, Steve.
Yeah, you bring home a boy, I'll tear off his nuts and eat them. Yeah. Because really, who's the real goblin in that situation?
Who's the real goblin? The nut-eating dad?
Goblins don't eat meat.
Nuts, though. Nuts are like vegetables.
Nuts are okay, yeah.
Yes, so everyone in this movie seems like an alien who does not know how humans talk. And that kind of actually adds to the eeriness of the goblins. The fact that they are so strange would work if the humans were normal, but nobody in this movie is normal.
Was the whole movie saying, I bet you they're all goblins.
That's a fair point, actually. I never thought of that.
Eric, you said you have a lot of questions about this movie.
I have some questions and I have some quotes.
Okay.
So I enjoyed Are You Trying to Make Me a Homo? Because it sparked a conversation between Steve and I that if you kick somebody in the nuts, does the breaking of or the damaging of the testicles cause you to be attracted to other men? Or did that boy think that maybe homosexuals didn't have testicles? I don't really know what was going on, but it caused some questions for sure. Steve, as I said, did have to start delving into some of the reasons behind why this film felt like it did. So he did discover the Italian connection. But before I knew that, I wrote, it feels like they somehow found 20 people who have never heard of the concept of acting before. It was kind of this mix of the writing was so bad and it didn't seem normal or what people would say, but then even how the lines were delivered seemed kind of like stage acting, but then also there was no immersion in it whatsoever. It was just terrible.
And the facial expressions reminded me of like a poorly acted soap opera.
Yeah, the 12-year-old kid there, Joshua, he seemed disgusted by everything that came out of anyone's mouth.
What with the vegetable world?
Yeah, there was a quote, you'll be one with the vegetable
world.
And then right after that, the one nerdy friend who got turned into a plant, he just pointed out the scene, they're eating her. And
oh my God!
And I enjoyed that line. I thought it was great. One of my favorite scenes was when the grandpa haunted the wrong room. I thought this was clever. I've never seen this in a movie before, where Grandpa Seth would always be haunting Joshua, explaining how Joshua needed to defend his family and protect his family from the goblins. And he, at one point, went to the wrong room and haunted Joshua's sister. And then Joshua's sister freaked out and screamed and whatever. And then they switched rooms, and then Joshua talked with his grandpa. And his ethereal, ghost-like grandpa was like, I'm sorry, I'm just getting to know this new house. It was just like this weird practical aspect to the spiritual realm of ghosts that I never considered. So maybe that's a thing.
You gotta get oriented to the landscape.
Yeah, and I found that to be provocative and interesting. Also later on the ghost popped out of a mirror and cut a lady's hand off. So, he also had the connection with the real world. I was wondering why no one ever wonders why there's green icing on everything. And I also was confused as to why they called the cake with green icing pudding. I think it's just a translation issue now, knowing this Italian.
Well, now we know the secret of goblins, too. Like, they offer you pudding, and it's clearly a cake.
And it's clearly a cake.
You're a goblin.
That's a goblin. Yeah,
If someone ever says, would you like some pudding, but they hand you a cake, you know they're a goblin?
Oh, you're a
Yeah,
goblin.
I guess we should have like these kind of rule of thumb ways of protecting ourselves. And if somebody offers you pudding, but they're handing you a cake, then you know it's a goblin.
It's
Strange
like,
scar.
you're a redneck when? You know you're a goblin?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things.
And, the obvious thing, vegetarian. If you're a vegetarian, you're goblin.
Yeah, I get into that big. Like, Steve and I started discussing, because it seems like at one sermon, all these goblins go to church service.
Yeah, they go to a church service with a crazy preacher.
They go to this, and this preacher is just going up and down about the evils and this disgust of meat. And basically, goblins are vegetarian. And there's so many questions there. I think this is the crux of the movie. It's like, very anti-vegetarian, obviously. What was the quote that you read, Steve? This movie was supposed to address
serious matters and vegetarianism.
I'm wondering, is this like a conservative or Republican propaganda thing against some of the woke stuff?
Sure.
But of course it came out before. So then I was wondering, maybe if the idea all came from this Italian guy, was he just like one of these very grumpy children who his mother would try and force him to eat vegetables, and this was his rebellion?
You said that there was like 20 people they got together who were just like the worst actors ever. Did anybody stand out to you in this movie as being convincing or a good actor?
No. We were thinking Michael Caine might pop in. Just because
he needed to pay for his sister's house or something.
And I think he would have been a good actor.
You think Michael Caine would have been a good actor?
Oh yeah, he would have been a good actor in this. I think Michael Caine, I would have bought whatever he was selling for sure. But he wasn't in it. I don't know. I guess if anybody was like a decent actor, the one guy who owned the grocery store, he seemed like a legitimate creepy actor that I think if you would have just put him in another 80s or 90s horror movie, he might have fit in, if not everything else was so bad around the woods or something.
Okay, so
I don't know.
Yes, that is the answer that I was looking for. The guy that you are referring to, his real name is Don Packard, and he filmed this movie on day trips from a mental hospital.
Oh my gosh.
Get it on a day pass to go film this movie?
So there's realistic questions about how much he understood about whether or not this was real or hallucinations. I think he is the one good actor in this movie. I think he is scary. And that's probably not acting.
So he's like actually schizophrenic or something?
Yeah.
Just totally understood the people hear voices and see things.
And goblins are out there.
Yeah, grandiose delusions. Okay.
I may be one of them. Drink this milk. Drink this milk.
I didn't understand why the milk wasn't green. I guess that's the thing.
It was definitely curdled, though.
It was curdled milk, but it was still white. And there seemed to be a confusion between green and blue at some points.
Is it actually cow's milk? I got the vibe like maybe it was like almond milk or something.
Definitely couldn't have been cow's milk.
No.
Yeah, I was confused by that too, because again, vegetarians, but then they hated eggs, which is a product of
eggs.
Yeah. Which is a product of chickens. Actually, yeah, that actual legitimate crazy guy, his scene was confusing because he was like so angry about the food the kid was asking for. And then right away, he was so welcoming, giving free milk away. It was abrupt, like it would have caused me pause, but it was one of those things where it would fit in a movie, I suppose.
So let me put you guys in a situation, and you guys tell me what you would do.
Okay.
You arrive in a strange town. You come into the kitchen, and on the table, there is all kinds of pudding/cake with green Kool-Aid that your family is about to eat. But you've been warned by a ghost that it will kill them.
Okay.
How
so
would you
You have
stop
30
them?
seconds to decide.
That's right.
So, Tim, I know where you're going with this, but I think your logic is flawed here. The only clear action that you could do would be to urinate all over the table.
Yeah, so for listeners who haven't seen this movie, his family is about to eat the contaminated food. And so the boy stands up on his chair and pees all over the food.
To prevent them from consuming it, which would turn them into plant people, which could then be consumed by goblins.
That's right.
If they're turned into plant people, are they plant-based or are they still meat-based plants?
I think it's a conversion. It converts them into plants.
But no, because we've turned plants into burgers, right? Beyond Meat.
Okay.
So they're just turning their burgers into plants.
Yeah, maybe it's like a Beyond Meat thing. Or maybe goblins are truly behind the Beyond Beef thing. Yeah, anyway, that's a good point, Tim, or Mitt. I don't know what else one could have done. I was suggesting ideas to the movie as we were watching it, that maybe he murder his family, because that would fit the horror genre, or burn his house down. These are all possible things that might stop you from eating, as if your kid tried to kill you or tried to light the house on fire. Which comes in later. Actually, that's one of my favorite scenes.
The ghost with the Molotov cocktail?
Yeah, when Grandpa gives the kid a Molotov cocktail, like that was an enjoyable scene.
I think Ghostbusters really missed something there. They should have had Molotov cocktail ghosts.
Well, this movie did come out after Ghostbusters, so...
Oh, really?
Don't accuse it of not having any original ideas. This was 1990.
That makes it even more sad, to be honest, because like they had all these things they could have done and ways they saw could work, and they just ignored it all.
But, I mean, these goblins that are just vegetarian eaters have the sharpest teeth for vegetarians that I've ever known.
Yeah, honestly. Like, about 3/4 the way through the movie, Steve brings up, boy, they got sharp teeth for vegetarians. I had never considered that. If they eat plants, why do they have these big fangs? It just evolutionarily, it doesn't work.
And bulging eyes.
Oh, yeah. The one goblin had amazing eyes. I laughed every time.
That's because it ate all of its carrots.
Yeah, it must have.
Oh.
Yeah, it could see in the dark for sure. Also, the character who played the pagan Stonehenge.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about the Goblin Queen. Because
Credence,
she definitely steals the show for me in the back half.
Her accent changed like 3 different times, I think.
Yeah, I like the accent swing. It was this very subtle hint that, maybe her accent isn't real, because there was this slight swing in the accent. So then it just gave it away that, maybe this isn't legitimate. Maybe she's not just a druid descendant, you know?
Okay, so we meet her. She lives in a church, I guess.
Yeah.
And
old church, yeah.
the nerdy guy and some blonde girl that he finds in the woods.
Randall girl running through the woods.
Escape there, and then they drink some green Kool-Aid beer or something, which starts to turn them into plants. She was already turning into a plant, so... She stumbles up 2 flights of stairs so that she can be eaten by some goblins. And he, of course, has his amazing narrative yelling fit. Oh my God! They're eating her! They're going to eat me next! Amazing. We've already touched on it.
Yeah, I was impressed by that.
Yeah. So then he gets turned into a potted plant.
A potted plant, yeah.
And she's got some interactions. She gets her hand cut off. But then she goes back to the power of Stonehenge and the Druids or whatever.
Yeah.
It regrows her hand. And she gets transformed into like a sexy version of her.
Yeah.
She then...
That's the true power of Stonehenge, Tim.
Well, yeah, this may surprise you guys. But I don't really understand this part of the movie.
Oh, were you confused? Because I can explain it. It was really straightforward.
I'll tell you my observations.
This is a horror movie, and they didn't have an obligatory sex scene, Tim. You know, that's the power of Stonehenge.
I'll explain to you my observations, and then hopefully you guys can help me understand what happened in the scene. Up
Go ahead.
until this point, the intention of the movie is to tell you that goblins like to eat vegetables, but they don't settle for vegetables that grow from the earth. They need to turn humans into vegetables so that they can eat them.
So yeah, of course.
She
Beyond meat.
gets the power of ancient druids, becomes sexy, and then makes her way to the last friend who came on this trip. And he's hanging out in their motorhome. She goes in and she says, let's have some corn. They both put a corn in the cob in their mouths together. And then the scene is so hot that corn starts popping.
Yeah. And not just that corn. There was popcorn coming from everywhere.
Yeah, every direction. It was like watching the Minecraft movie in theaters.
And so then the motorhome fills with popcorn. The guy drowns/dies of popcorn, and
I have no idea.
she leaves, but all of her sexy powers are now gone. She's reverted to just being the Goblin Queen. And then she goes back to try and help the goblins make everyone else into vegetables.
Yeah.
What was her motivation? Did she just need to make some popcorn?
She needed popcorn, man. Sometimes you just need popcorn when you're watching a movie.
It wasn't laid out really well, I think, in the film here. Because they had to compress everything down to an hour and a half, I read the novel, and it was about 800 pages. And so there's a lot more in-depth kind of goblin history there. And so
I appreciate
a goblin queen does need to make love with a human, and it usually involves popcorn in order to produce more goblin babies. They just didn't have the time to get into the nuances of that in the movie. Of course, like I said, it was definitely a large part of the book series.
The book series, multiple books.
Yeah, there was 13 of them, I think. It was a couple different authors. One of the authors had died halfway through, so yeah, it was a big series.
In all seriousness,
I'm making all that up. It makes no sense at all. I have no idea why that happened.
When I was watching it and the popcorn shot, I burst out laughing and I had to rewatch that. It caught me so off guard.
We were laughing pretty hard as well. Steve leaned over to me at one point and said, we're about to watch some corn. And I thought that was a fantastic joke. Yeah, she completely wasted all of her pagan power on
all of it.
Popping the corn with the guy. And seemingly no benefits to her cause. And then afterwards, she realized the kid and his grandpa were touching the Stonehenge. And they needed to get back to the base to defend it. So she did this scream just outside of the holiday trailer. But I don't know why she was there. Steve has a thought.
No, I have no thoughts about any of that with her. But the one thing that I would say is that we found out in this that the true power is not in the Stonehenge stones. It's in a triple bologna sandwich.
Yeah.
That's the true power.
A double-decker bologna sandwich.
Yeah, 3 massive slices of bologna on that sucker. And that undid the goblins.
Again, we're coming back to that vegetarian theme and meat being good. I feel like this was a petulant child who was getting back at his mother after 40 years or something.
Man, that popcorn scene just does it for me. I don't know.
I will point out one positive from the movie. I thought they did a great job on their bubbly drinks and potions. You know, the smoke coming off the drinks and stuff. They did it for the tea or whatever that they were supposed to consume. And then also in Stonehenge there was some potions with these kind of cool different colors bubbling around. It was very realistic.
Very realistic.
Magical. That's how I would imagine that to look. And I just thought they did a great job. I would give it 1 or 2% on Rotten Tomatoes just for those.
Also, pulling out a chainsaw and chopping down the potted plant guy. That was magical, too.
Yeah, that was random.
The nerdy guy who was the potted plant, I guess in real life, they nailed his shoes to that potted plant. And he had to stand there for like 12 hours.
What? For real?
For real.
I bet you that the idea of peeing on the table came from that. Because if he had to sit there for 12 hours, he had to pee at some point. And I bet somebody's like, oh, we could solve the other problem.
So the pee on the table was not scripted. The director...
Oh, really?
Yeah. In the moment was like, no. I want him to pee on the food. It's like, of course you do. This guy's got some weird kinks.
Yeah, I think he may. I was starting to think more and more that Joshua was suffering from schizophrenia. I know we talked about this actor who came in from a mental institute or asylum or whatever to do his role and did great at it. But I was wondering if maybe it's a social commentary on mental health and the dangers of listening to the voices.
Yeah, well, and the ending doesn't make sense.
Nope.
Essentially, they beat the goblins, they escape, and then they go home. Mom gets turned into a vegetable and goblins eat her in front of Joshua.
Yeah.
So that does kind of lend credence, like maybe this is all in Joshua's head. Maybe it's all schizophrenia because that shouldn't have happened. Maybe Joshua is the bad guy. He's just throwing Molotov cocktails at randos in the street.
Yeah. And, the power of bologna sandwiches and concentration.
Maybe that is the director's comment that we did not have schizophrenia before we had vegetarianism. Maybe eating only vegetables and not meat is actually causing mental disorders. Maybe that's his thought.
Maybe. Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about, or should we take it to close?
Okay, I'll just bring up this, and then we can go to close. The scene where the preacher sends Grandpa to hell. Usually in movies, it's just good people don't go to hell, but I guess goblins have the power to send spiritual beings to heaven or hell, I don't know, or to a different realm or dimension. And I was intrigued, but very confused, because I just didn't think it was fleshed out enough. And then the grandpa denied that and said he knew a special magic. And then when he did that, the Molotov cocktail, which was now in the preacher goblin's hand, blew up and the preacher goblin burned, and then everybody got to see his real identity. I don't know, Tim, if you understood it more or if you have more thoughts behind that.
I mean, it's in book number 4 of the series.
Troll and ogre theory.
That's right. Heaven is reserved for legumes and leaves. Whereas us,
I don't know.
Meaty creations, us flesh and blood, bologna sandwiches go straight to hell.
Absolutely. You're telling me he got thrown into the legume of fire?
I'm good to go to the ending now.
So when we talk about objectively awful or subjectively awful, for me, this is pretty cut and dry. This isn't about whether or not someone dislikes this movie. It checks all the boxes to be objectively bad. There are very few redeeming qualities about this movie, and that's actually what makes it fun and entertaining. Like, it's so bad. This is another one of those movies that, like The Room, sells out theaters of people who go to watch it and have an experience. People just like to get together and watch terrible movies. Yeah, for me, cut and dry, this is objectively awful. I do kind of like it because it's so terrible, but Steve and I are different in that way.
I agree. I would say if you're gotta watch a movie about goblins, go watch Ernest Scared Stupid instead.
Ooh, it's been forever since I've watched that. That's
Steve, when is the last time you saw that movie?
When did it come out?
So you would be disappointed to know that we reviewed that movie for my other podcast, Bullied Nostalgia, this last Halloween. And those are trolls in that movie.
Those are trolls, okay.
You can see his confusion.
Well, I wonder if the creators of Ernest Scared Stupid actually knew what they were doing with that, because they looked like goblins.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, it is objectively awful. You can't argue unless it's being facetious. It was bad in every way. I liken it to Miami Connection. Obviously, very different story, but it's so bad that it is entertaining, and it makes you want to find out more about why it's so bad. Because if people from North America were honestly totally inexperienced, but had seen movies and had tried to replicate them, they would have done so much better. You need to know what's the story, because it doesn't make sense that it would be this bad if people understood the culture that they were trying to speak to.
It's funny because half of the movies we've looked at now either are made by people who do not understand the culture that they're investing in, or are bad because of studio interference. It's one of those things where a movie like this could maybe have been saved by studio interference.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes you're like, studio, get out of there. And then other times it's like, studio, where were you?
All I know, I'm going to dream about vegetarian goblins tonight.
Speaking of things that Steve's going to dream about, did you sleep last night?
Did I sleep last night?
Yeah.
Knowing I was going to have to watch this today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was a restless night.
Are you coming back for another one? Should we look
I don't know if I can do it, Tim. I don't know if I can do it.
Was this better or worse than your Borderlands experience?
I laughed a lot more at watching this than the Borderlands. I listened back, and I mean, the thing about our Borderlands, it was just nothing. It was just so bland.
Yeah.
This was just bad. And so bad it was laughable.
And you didn't enjoy laughing, Steve?
No, I don't enjoy laughing. I
Okay.
enjoy vegetables. And bologna sandwiches.
Why bologna sandwich?
I don't know
Is that
why.
because it's Italian? Bologna? I don't know.
In
What's
Ninja
the
Turtles
most Italian
2,
meat you can think of? Bologna.
Michelangelo in the beginning grabs meat and he goes, "Combat cold cuts," and he beats up these guys with these links of meat. And then he says, like, "Next time I'll use mustard." All I could think was like, he could school all of the goblins. Like anybody, if they had just brought a couple sticks of meat, these things would just roll over.
What you wouldn't give for a few sausage links, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I never even thought about that.
Okay, well, are we thinking that we might do another old bad movie? Or what would you guys like to do next? What intrigues you?
Are you still recording or are you done now?
I didn't stop it from recording, but...
It depends what goal
Well, I'm just saying,
out
I
of
don't know.
I don't know, Tim. I don't know what I can handle.
Sounds like you're willing to test it, though.
Is that what it sounds like?
Should have been in sales then.
How'd you like to try that one in the black? You need to take this out on the road and see how it really handles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This took it out of me.
Okay, well, it
All right,
was
buddy.
great
Chat
hanging
later.
out, and it was great hearing Steve suffer. We'll chat again soon.
Beware those bologna sandwiches.
Beware those bologna
Sounds good.
sandwiches.